you'd like to contact the show, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com or get involved in the conversation on social media. Join the Pearl Jam Podcast community group on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at liveonfourlegspod.
It's on my side. Yes, it is. Time is on my side. Yes, it is. One more time. Time is on my side. Well, we're going to take our time tonight. And away we go.
You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Gentlemen. Mama Creed. Matt fucking Cameron in the drum. Mr. Boom Gasper. You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
Hey everybody now, welcome to Live on Four Legs, a definitive live Pearl Jam podcast, and this is sadly the last episode of 2021. Believe it or not, we have lived through another calendar year on this show. It has felt like it has been a long calendar year, but haven't all of these years felt like they've been pretty long? It's been that decade so far. So we go into 2022 fresh, and the way that we're doing it is to finish off our hometown series that we've been doing all year, and we've been saving this one. Today we're going to do one that a lot of people are familiar with. It's the Showbox show from 2002. This one was immortalized on DVD. They were doing a lot of DVDs at this time. They did that, and then right afterwards they did Live at the Garden. So a lot of people were able to see live Pearl Jam in a different way that maybe they didn't have before then. So, why don't we just get into it? It's the last show of the year. Let's celebrate. It's Christmas time. Let's do our thing. Randy Sobel over here, John Ferrer over there.
Hello.
Yo, this is kind of funny because the first thing that I think of now that I think about this show, because actually the first time I ever watched this show, do you know where I was?
In middle school.
I was in your basement.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. Yeah, no, that was great. I think you and your wife were going on vacation down here. You were going to be visiting some friends and stuff, and yeah, stopped by, and we ended up doing like a live stream watching this, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
we did.
Like we did like a Facebook Live or something, and yeah, you had never seen this before. So this was the one that I pulled out. I was like, "Oh yeah, you got to see it. It's a great performance."
But you were hiding something from me that I didn't know even really existed that I really would have rather watched, and that is the 1995 Vitalogy Asia documentary.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that once you mention something, I'm like, oh, turn this shit off. We gotta watch that. Yes, we need to watch that. But we watched this for a while, and we kind of skipped around through a bunch of songs. And I just remember, I think there were specific moments in this that you were like, okay, we need to watch this, and there were very specific things that we needed to see. And obviously, look, that's prime territory for any Pearl Jam fan in 2002, 2003, when Riot Act is first coming out, and a lot of people are obviously going through the tour circuits, and they're going to do a lot of shows on the Riot Act tour in 2003. But I think that this DVD and the Live at the Garden DVD helped, but having this sort of as another visual for Pearl Jam, and on, I guess, less of a scale, it's professional, but it's also doesn't seem all that professional. It's not like there's all these different camera cuts and changes and things like that. It's pretty, it's pretty amateur professional, I would say, but it's still pretty decent quality. But it's exactly what you would think the quality would be for a show of 500 people or so.
Yeah, you're not getting like a big stage show, a big production value. The reason you get this is to see them like in their element in that small place where the music and the performance can shine through, and it's not a lot of bells and whistles on it. They want you to be able to feel what it was like to see them in that small place.
So you tell us, when you first got the DVD, when you first kind of witnessed this, what was it like to see them? And know they had been playing in amphitheaters, that they had been playing hockey and basketball arenas and beyond. What was it like to see them back in a place like this, something that they hadn't done in maybe a decade?
Yeah, I mean, the only time I had seen them at this point was at that Atlanta '98 show, and like you said, like one of those big open air amphitheaters where you're half a mile away and they're half a mile away from each other on stage, and you're just kind of like not an active participant at the show. You're more like a spectator. But this really, you got to see a lot of like the little intangible things that go on, like the looks between band members. You get to see how Matt was interacting with them, how, this is one of the first Boom performances. Like we get to see Boom in action. Like we had heard about that. Like, oh, they found this dude who's going to play keyboards. What's that going to be like? And just the intensity of Ed comes through. There's a couple of moments in this that we'll get to that people already are screaming at me, but it's just the intensity of being in a small place. And like we say, he feeds off that connection with the audience and being close up and their energy. And like he needs that to elevate the performance and they really get to where he needs to be. And with this, the audience is right there. The crowd's right there. You see the front row, you see people right up close and personal. So yeah, I'm just jealous he probably was the first one. And then just, yeah, how cool is this? Like, I would love to see this someday and still would.
Set a really good precedent for what was to come in the rest of the year. I feel like these two shows, and then we actually did a show that was 2002 not long ago, a couple of months ago, that we did that 2002 show. And there are some similarities here because you have, like, right off the bat, they both have very long slow burns. They have stretches in both shows where they play nothing but like 5 Riot Act songs in a row, and maybe the same 5, if I'm not mistaken. It was pretty similar in format, but it kind of brought you in and told you, all right, this is what this era is going to be. We're going to get stuff like Bush Leaguer. We're going to get stuff they're not jovial in this at all. They become jovial, but it's kind of, the mood is a little bit tense very early on in this. And, I think it's just the sense of the time period. And I think it's just the sense of like, maybe they had like a House of Blues show in Chicago that Stone didn't even, he wasn't there for. He was somewhere else, which is just a weird story in Pearl Jam's history, but it happened. But they hadn't played a lot of these songs, especially the older ones yet. And you're able to tell when you hear some of them in this version. But yeah, 2003, I think they were always a lot more comfortable and felt more comfortable as time went on, especially that second leg of the U.S. tour, that it just felt like they were connecting with the crowd and they were telling stories and things were going on. But, in this, it's interesting. This is it's almost like a different time period than where they would be.
I mean, and they hadn't really played in 2 years. And at that point, that was an eternity.
And the last time they did play, things weren't all that positive. Things weren't all that good. They were going through some stuff. They didn't know that they would be a band again. They ended up playing the 2001 Bridge School shows, and they came back kind of, no one was sure really what they were going to end up doing for that. And then this is kind of your first foray into what would be the new era, and maybe starting a completely different era from what those would be in the past. And a lot of that could be due to the way that you visualize this and the way that you see Ed with a shaved head. And I think a lot of people immediately think to this era when they think of Ed without long hair. That's neither here nor there, but I think that's one of the determining factors in how this gets tied into history a little bit. Because you could just pinpoint when you could see a clip and know exactly, okay, that is 2002, 2003, just by seeing Ed.
And again, when we've done a few of these 2003, 2002 shows, and it's like, you kind of have to put yourself back in that mindset of like real soon after 9/11, Iraq War, like it's just a different time. Things were very, very tense, and they reflected that in their performances because that's what they do.
Yeah, and sometimes they do it better than anybody else, and I think that's a lot of what we're going to get into today. Any feelings about this being the last hometown show? And it looks like we've hit pretty much every good Seattle show that there is. I'm sure that there are others out there. I mean, night one of this little series, we can end up doing that at some point in the future. But like, what'd you think of the series that we did this year? And it was kind of our homage to the 30 years of Pearl Jam.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic, and we'd hit on a couple before, and like this just makes me want to go see them in Seattle even more. Like I've never been to Seattle. I would love to go there, and I would love to see Pearl Jam there. So I'm hoping that maybe in 2022, if there are shows there, I will have an opportunity to do that. But yeah, it's just whetted my appetite to go see them there. It would be really, 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 really special.
Yeah, I think with all of what happened with the Showbox from the last couple of years, and especially from when the home shows happened, where the Save the Showbox campaign was going on, and I believe they voted to keep it, but it's still there was another hurdle to climb over, if I'm not mistaken. But I can see a world where they do what they did on this tour, and they played a warm-up show at the Showbox for raising money to keep the venue alive, raising money for local artists in the area, or even going back to homeless youth or something like that. So all that kind of ties into the hometown, and I think the whole series, we got to hit a lot of really, really important shows in that this year that it would have taken us longer to do without having the set placement of doing a Seattle show every single month. So, and if you want to go back, they're all in our archive. Anything from the Mural Amphitheater show to Drop in the Park to 2000, 11/6/2000, to we pretty much hit all of the good Piss Bottleman shows. The Showbox show from 96, like we pretty much hit everything. So all in our archives, all fantastic stuff. We're going to get into a great one today, the way that we jump into the show, let the show begin. Ed is coming out and serenading the crowd to a little Rolling Stone song. Time is on our side. The crowd gets into it and they're singing along together. It says, we're going to take our time tonight. And before we start, we'd like to thank, well, look at that, Steve Earle. Steve Earle was mentioned on the podcast last week because he joined for Rockin' in the Free World. So, hey.
We've had a couple of these little coincidences, these little runs this year, too.
Yep. And I don't know if that falls in the Colin Powell rule, but it's, I mean, relevant is relevant. And I guess if it's our show relevant, it's relevant enough. So, all right. I mentioned before that there was a little bit of a slow burn to this show, and the way it's going to start is no 1 2 3 4 2 3. I believe this is the same exact way that they started that show that we did. I guess that was from December 8th, 2002.
Right. The next one after this, yeah.
Yep. No 1 2 3 4 2 3, but they go right into Small Town.
I see, recognize your face, haunting. I can't seem to place it. May I find a candle of thought to light your name. Lifetimes of catching up with me. All these changes take place. I wish I'd seen the place, but no one's ever taken me. Hearts and thoughts, they fade away. Hearts and thoughts, they fade away.
I think I remember the way that they opened that last one. I'm just like, and I realized why I wasn't that into that opening stretch. And it was probably due to the video that we had of it. It was a wide angle, and it didn't give us much facial reactions. It didn't give you much of the crowd tension. It was just it was very bootleg and very there. But in this, however, pretty much the same kind of version, very tense, kind of slow burn and building to the big moments, not even necessarily being a crowd responsive song, even though they are giving them the lines. I thought that this was definitely better than what we saw from a couple months ago. And I think that's just because we get the reaction on stage and we get to sense what they're doing up there, and I think it's easier to take that in than it is to watch just a YouTube video that was filmed almost 20 years ago.
Right, and it's just a different vibe, you know. Key Arena to Showbox, even though the song is one of their biggest kind of sing-alongs, it still can be kind of a chameleon and you know, come up in different ways. This to me is like knowing the set list that we're gonna get, like all of these Riot Act songs and all these debuts. I think this is kind of a weird choice because you think this is going to be like, oh, we're going to get like a big sing-along show. We're going to get some hits, but this is not foreshadowing for the rest of the show here. But this opening, I think, you know, you mentioned he comes out, does the little Stones tease there. I think this first three, especially the next one we're going to get to, sounds very Stones-ish, very kind of that folky acoustic sound that they dabbled in, and even more than dabbled in. Just sounds just like that to me, like kind of late 60s Stones, I thought.
You're on to something there, and I think we mentioned it when we did that 97 show, like what song would be the most Rolling Stones-ish sounding song. I think you're right. I think it is Off He Goes. I think that's the one. Going back to your point, saying that Small Town opened the show and you didn't feel like you had any crowd moments from this night, like sing-along songs like that. I thought that this Small Town really wasn't much of a sing-along. He gives them the hello line, but that's all that they really count for, you know, that you don't necessarily get the crowd interaction outside of that. Like, you don't even hear him kind of pandering to them at the end or anything like that. I don't think the song has really become that quite yet, but still, they're trying to kind of tap into a vibe here at the beginning, and I think it's really going to come through during Thumbing My Way, where that's going to debut. I think that these are all setting up for this.
Yeah, and Small Town, you know, he's not going to play it up when there's 500 people there, as opposed to when there's 20,000 or 50,000, you know. Like I said, it's a different vibe to it. And talked about Small Town, like I said, it's one of those chameleon songs where it can take on a number of different personalities. But yeah, I thought Off He Goes, fantastic. And then Thumbing My Way really brings it all together. The debut, I thought the crowd recognizes it immediately. There's a real cheer of recognition where you get the feeling like, oh, they're telling them, okay, this crowd knows this record, they've heard it, and they're excited to hear these songs. And Thumbing My Way was just pin-droppingly perfect here. I thought it was one of the highlights.
I have not been home since you left long ago. I'm thumbing my way back to heaven, counting the steps, walking backwards on the road. I'm counting my way back to heaven. I can be free with what's locked inside of me. If there was a key, you took it. There's no wrong or right, but I'm sure there's good and bad. Though questions linger overhead. No matter how cold the winter, there's a springtime ahead. I'm thumbing my way back to bed.
I think I go back to the way that Man of the Hour at Benaroya Hall was, in the way that pin drop, you said it.
Yeah.
You can hear a pin drop during this, and everybody was on edge, like visualizing it and kind of knowing where the song is coming from, and that it's the first time they're playing this, and there's going to be a lot of brand new tributes that come along within the Riot Act songs, and I think that this is kind of a subtle one in that I've always kind of attributed this to sort of an aftermath of Roskilde kind of thing, but yeah, everybody's on edge with this, and I think the first two are constructed so that Thumbing My Way could stick out, but the overall tone of this performance is just magnificent. It's really well done. You can feel the energy just frozen, and everybody feeling the weight of significance of this performance. It was very, very good.
Yeah, for a debut to be this good, it really tells you something about how they had worked up these songs and like just the strength of this album. I mean, you get 10 Riot Act songs here. I mean, they're very close to getting the whole thing. This album, like when it first came out, I did not like it. Did not think it was up to par from the other ones, but this might even be like a top 4, top 5 album for me right now.
Yeah, I've grown with it. I've definitely grown with it throughout the years too, and I think more so of it being a good album, I think the songs have really grown, and maybe it's that getting them live and getting to hear them in a live atmosphere makes you appreciate them a little bit more. But Thumbing My Way was never in my top, but I think that this has become a top 3 Riot Act song for me, absolutely. Thumbing My Way is kind of the highlight of this whole 4-song slow burn, but Off He Goes as well. I thought that really, really good storytelling in it, and I think that's where the song plays to its strength, is through its storytelling, and this is the best way to do it, kind of when it's a little bit more downtrodden, a little bit more folksy, and
exactly
they kind of, the versions that come out now are a little bit more soaring and a little bit more upbeat progressive, and Mike usually has kind of a fun solo. In this, it's kind of more soulful. I thought that this is the kind of version of Off He Goes that is as close to the original as you can get on the live stage, I think.
Yeah, they play it a lot more, like you mentioned, they play it on the front foot now. It needs to be relaxed and it needs to be brought back and reined in a little bit, and yeah, I like this a lot.
Let's cut to Thin Air, which is the 4th song here. And you'll hear a lot in this show. It is not uncommon for Ed to just make a lyric flub and just say, I'll get it right next time, or I didn't know that one. But look, they haven't played these songs in X amount of years, X amount of time. They're not going to know these ones as much. And I don't even think Thin Air was really being played a whole lot at that time anyway. I think that was sort of a one-off binaural that they weren't doing every single night, but it's building you into what you're going to get for the rest of the set, I think. And I think it's a good building block for that. And I'm not a huge fan of this song, but it does feel like you're getting a little bit more of an electric vibe from Mike. That was a nice feel for it, because it feels like usually this is pretty standard acoustic.
The thing that stood out to me on this one was Boom. This is one of Boom's first shows, and already he's on the piano here. He's adding some nice kind of tinkling piano through this thing. It sounded very good.
What we're noticing with Boom in the last 2 weeks is that he seems to have more of an impact on songs that we didn't think he had an impact on originally. And I don't know if we just caught him at 2 different spots that worked for him in this, because this is obviously, I think he's out for every single song on this show, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
It's hard to miss him. He's wearing like a yellow and orange striped shirt, or yellow and brown striped shirt or something like that. He's hard to miss anyway, but even though he's kind of tucked in the back, but still, it's interesting because a lot of these songs going forward, he probably doesn't have much of a role in even now.
Yeah, he was just kind of figuring it out. So a lot of the stuff you're getting, it would change over time. And like what they played, something like Thin Air, this is looked like the 21st performance. They've only played it 21 more times since then. So not a lot of chances, but he's kind of found his wheelhouse. You know what the big boom moments are going to be. And I think he tends to kind of like fade into the background when he doesn't have those big moments now.
Right, and especially that, now we know of the presence of Josh Klinghoffer. We don't know how much more of that we're going to see from Boom. I think Boom will have his old traditional classics, the Crazy Marys of the world and some others that he really shines on, but I think it's going to be balanced a little bit more. I don't think that's a slight against Boom at all. I think that's just a how can we get Josh into these shows. So, but that's another conversation for another time. Let's actually kind of dive into, now this is a set list. Now they're getting into what feels like a club show. And the first couple off the bat here, Breaker Fall, Green Disease, Corduroy Save You. I mean, you can go down the line. They don't take a break for a little while, but Breaker Fall is kind of all that tension that was happening within the first 4 songs. Ed just lets out that big scream at the beginning, and it's out, and they're ready to go. I think a lot of these songs in the beginning, especially the new stuff, there's still some tension in them, and then they kind of build into what they're supposed to be and their best type of versions of these songs. But Breaker Fall right away is just absolutely off the rails, and it's great to see the heads bouncing up and down in the crowd. They're playing off the crowd with the camera cuts, and Mike is doing some really crazy fretboard slides in this, and they're ready to go in this, even though it's not going to be a set where energy is the key. They do bring it on this song.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, you mentioned you see just people pogoing up and down. It's awesome. The one that hit me on this was Matt has a fill, I think right before might be the last chorus, that caught me off guard and sounded really, really good. Something different than he does on the record. And that really hit. But yeah, after those first 4, to get something like Breaker Fall here, and like I mentioned, a bunch of Riot Act songs, a lot of binaural songs too. So cool to get Breaker Fall here, not something you would normally get at a show, but you're in that environment. They're playing for a small group of people. So yeah, bust it out. And it's one of those songs that's just pure energy all the way through.
Seeing the direction that they would take after Breaker Fall, going into Green Disease and playing their second Riot Act song, and it's the 3rd performance of Green Disease. I think they must have played it at that House of Blues show, but they're playing these in what would traditionally be spots for more of the opening sequence type songs, but it just felt like kind of what I was saying. Some of the Riot Act songs in this show needed a little bit of life, and I'm not saying that from an aspect of they were poor performances. I'm saying that I think they were still working through a lot of it, and I think Green Disease was one of them that sounded like they didn't have their best version just yet, that they needed to play a little bit more off of the riffs, and the guitars weren't quite balanced out in the song, and it's another song that has 3 guitars on it, so of course there's going to be a trick to get it right live, but I don't think this one hit just as good as it does later in the tour.
Maybe. Yeah, I didn't catch that. To me, it sounded good. I like especially the little jam when Jeff is just vibing on that groove. It sounded really good. I thought that they really felt like they had it, but that's the way it goes. But we're burying the lead here. We got to get to. Corduroy's great, but we got to talk about Save You. This is a fantastic version of Save You.
I want to mention in Corduroy real quick. This is probably, again, a show that we can kind of skip Corduroy, because you can tell it's been 2 years since they played it, because in the song, he's singing the lyric, haven't sung this song in a real long time. That's all you really need to know about it. It's not a bad version, but like I mentioned before, there's some tension in the beginning, and there's some kind of weirdness in the beginning, but when they get to sort of the climactic moment, everything has changed. the song is able to break through and find its wheelhouse again. I think it happens with a lot of the songs here. I'm not going to mention it every time, but I thought Corduroy was definitely one of them. But yes, Save You, absolutely. Already noticing that Ed is just pouring with sweat, drenched in only 7 songs in. And if he's already drenched before Save You, imagine during Save You what's going on. This is the first that really shows the personality of Riot Act, and it feels like the band, you can tell, and maybe like in Green Disease, like the band wasn't as huddled together and didn't look like they were jamming on it as much, but like everybody once Save You hit looked like this is the one that we wanted to highlight for this crowd. This is the one that's going to stick around for the rest of this tour. This is the one we feel most comfortable with.
Yeah, it felt like everything kind of clicked on this. And Ed, just like you mentioned, just tears it apart. Stone has a really good, like, solo little lead thing. Jeff, again, I'll mention, like, just like in Green Disease, that when that little bass riff comes in on the little jam part, it sounds amazing. And then Mike at the end just takes his guitar and just smashes the hell out of it. You can tell that's like when he's feeling it, when he knows that there's some kind of energy in the room and some kind of energy on stage that he feels good enough to do that. It really felt like a cathartic kind of a thing, and that's the smashing the guitar was just the exclamation point at the end of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of shows you where they were with how they felt about the energy of the song, like you mentioned, and Ed screaming intensely at the end, primal, kind of, 1993, 1994-esque. There's not a lot of songs that you can say that about that can bring you back to the verses, especially the verses era, because I think that he was doing that the most back then, but this is one of them, and that's a compliment for everybody, and it's just really well done. And now it feels like the show can kick into a little bit more of a second gear. It's loosened up, while some of the other stuff, maybe Corduroy, they were like, okay, we haven't done it in a while, this is one we want to get right, obviously, and maybe some of the earlier stuff, it was just it took a little bit longer to get into. It feels like the band is loose after Save You. It feels like they felt something during this, and they're like, okay, now we're here at the show, and we're ready to get some of this new stuff out there and ready for it to sound good. I think Save You was the beginning of that.
Taking control, let's beat it up, let's go. Order in your own world, let's see the whole world. Oh, let's pick up your soul.
There's kind of a moment after this where Ed kind of like, it's not really a band huddle, but Ed kind of takes a moment and like looks aside, and I don't know if he said something or if there was a look, but I think it was like, okay, we're going to keep going with these, because I don't know if we have the original set list for this, but Save You is the beginning. You get 5 Riot Act songs in a row right here.
Yeah,
we talked about, and this is going to be another debut of Ghost, and I wonder if this was originally maybe not planned, but he was like, "We're feeling it. Let's do Ghost."
It's possible. And that's kind of a question that's going to be lost to time here, because I don't think we have that information. But you're getting the debut of Ghost, and I think the first thing that I'm thinking about is, can they get this right?
Mine is gray like the city, I'm back in overgrown. Love is deep, dig it out, I'm standing in, I'm all alone. Now working for something that one can never hold.
okay, like let's find our way. And I don't think that there was a lot of like jumping around and that kind of vibe to it. But yeah, Mike has a good solo on this. I thought, I don't know if you caught it, but like Ed did a little subtle leg lift when he sang the "Soap Makes You Taller" line. I don't know if you caught that. I thought that was kind of. I don't know if he does that every time, but
yeah, no, I couldn't remember. Yeah, but I got to give a shout out to. We've talked about a lot in the last few weeks about Cameron's background vocals. Sounded really good on this too.
Yeah, wasn't doing it much at the time, but yeah, kind of a little right, kind of back in there a little bit. But debut of a song that has only been played 21 times and would only get played like 10 on the tour. They would almost never do it. So interesting that they just weren't feeling it after a while.
It's a complicated song. I mean, it's one of those, they play it a couple of times and maybe one time it got screwed up, and like after that Ed just goes, nope, we don't have room for that. He's like, we're not going to struggle through that one every night on this tour. Like,
right.
If they can't nail it, then put it on the back burner.
Right. They actually take a moment after Ghost before Crop Duster I Am Mine to actually address the crowd, and Ed wants to address somebody that made it there from Chile and said that's the whole idea from this tour, that we'll never have to leave Seattle. Everyone can just come here. Hats off to the guy coming all this way. He probably had to check his shoes at 10 different airports. That was pretty relevant at the time because that was still pretty new.
Oh, yeah.
So that had to be mentioned. And he said, we'll probably get down to Chile in about 12 to 15 years. It took 3. So
it wouldn't take that long.
No. That will get you into Crop Duster and also get you into I Am Mine after Crop Duster. Crop Duster's never been one of my favorites off of Riot Act, but I'm always ready to kind of get into the ending and hear how the ending progresses. And I think that's, to me, the sell of the song is how it's going to build to get to that moment. I thought it was a good showcase for it, though.
Yes, very good. And I think it's helped by being in this group, like Ghost and Crop Duster back to back, I think is really good.
Right, if they were split apart, if they were just kind of seen as highlights on their own, I don't think that they would have been able to.
Now you get those and you're like, oh, they never play these, but like,
right,
it's still like a new one. Yeah,
done for the rarity. Then it needed to be done for the showcase aspect, and I think the crowd knows at the time that I Am Mine and Save You are the songs, and to get I Am Mine after Crop Duster, I think is the way to building to that moment to get to I Am Mine, and I Am Mine is usually very consistent in sets. It's interesting to see that they were so comfortable with this one at that time, and that it would turn into what it did, and that the other two would turn into what they did as well. I think that the tea leaves are kind of being planted here.
Yeah, I Am Mine's interesting because like we talked about that Bridge School version, the debut, and kind of how powerful that was being so close to the genesis of it, but this one, I think it didn't really hit with the small venue and everything. It more of when it opens up, you needed the power of like a big arena or a big venue behind it to give it that extra oomph. And this one, I felt like it didn't have it. But it's interesting here with, you're getting the, Save You through Love Boat Captain. You're getting 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the record, just in kind of a different order. So
all side A, right?
Yeah. So that kind of like maybe gives it a little more spotlight there because you're kind of leading up to it. But in that case, then, Love Boat Captain is the cleanup hitter here. This is maybe the best performance on this night.
To get into Love Boat Captain, Ed noticed that people had made some noise for Boom and says you guys have acknowledged him. He doesn't have clams beneath his hands. This is our Love Boat Captain, Boom Gaspar. And really, that's probably the first real introduction to everybody in Boom. And not just the people in the crowd there, but anybody that has bought this DVD. I believe it came out that May and was able to kind of witness him before witnessing them on tour in 2003. But yeah, okay, so Love Boat Captain, pretty impassioned version. Ed shrieking on a lot of those lines. I think that there's a part in one of the choruses that he loses it, and it feels like he has all this emotion, all this power running through him. Like we mentioned before, the aspect of Roskilde coming in with a lot of these songs is going to impact the emotional performances here, and the change of lyrics in this song, Lost Nine Friends, I'm getting to know more and more every day. I thought that was a pretty impactful change.
It's an art to live pain, makes the light and to gray. Lost nine friends
third performance. It's just a little side that, like, they haven't forgotten, and they never did. Like, they got to know those families, and they stayed in touch with them and tried to make it right, and they've done the best they could. But it's Roskilde, it's 9/11, it's all that stuff just poured into the song and this performance. It really kind of took me aback, and especially even the crowd, you know, doing the little, like, love, like, call and response thing at the end. I thought that was really powerful.
Yeah, you kind of take it for granted a little bit now because you kind of think those moments are okay. But even when you see it in a 2002 show, it's just like, all right, yeah, of course, that's just what they do in the song. But this is the third version, like you said, that's a lot more impactful than something way later down the line, where of course you know what the call and response moment is going to be. Yeah,
and I think I saw Jessica there in the front row doing it.
Oh yeah,
yeah, it's hard to tell, but I think she was there.
I would not doubt it at all. If anybody else was there, maybe we'll look out for them on camera too. All right, so transitioning out of all the Riot Act songs, you're getting God's Dice, and that's going to bring you in through another Riot Act song in Half Full. God's Dice sounded really tight, even though, like, Ed seems like he's kind of looking down to either check lyrics, remember lyrics, and is late on some verses in this. I thought it was a good transitional performance to break up kind of the Riot Act stuff and to give you another one of the binaural songs, like you said, that they were playing earlier, and bringing you into Half Full, which obviously the highlight of Half Full is always going to be Mike, but more so than the solo on Half Full, the highlight is Mike strumming at the end of it, and looking at him and looking how intense he is, and getting right to the top of the stage and just ripping through it. That's Mike's big performance from the night, I think. And
yeah, he just goes nuts. Yeah.
Especially, like I mentioned, the solo aspect.
Mm-hmm.
The solo wasn't the most powerful thing about that version. It was the ending and the strumming at the end. That perplexes me, because this is a bluesy palette for Mike to go crazy on.
Yeah, and even for me, I worked on to the break that Stone has, like the little guitar break where he kind of like leads into that last part, is just perfect. Like, it could not be done better than that. So props to Stone there. I thought that would be a Half Full, another great performance from us.
Is transitioning into what is probably the biggest talking point out of this entire show, and that is Daughter. You can tell, you can look at Ed's face during Daughter that he knows he's kind of holding on to something. He's holding on to
he's getting that angsty face going.
Right, he's holding something back, and you transition into the tag territory, and it's just getting eerily quiet, and the shades go down, the bombs go down. We're used to getting a little crowd call and response in this part, like you mentioned before with Love Boat Captain. You know, we're usually used to the hey, that kind of thing, but we're not getting it. And it seems like that's the appropriate response for what's about to come. Not like anybody knew what was about to come, but holy fuck.
To agree, this is what is democracy. You don't have to agree with me. This is the meaning of democracy. Yeah. But is it good
culmination of the last 2 years.
Right. Everything that needed to be said without necessarily being said was translated in this. And Ed is in some complete sort of trance in this. It's so weird because I don't think he's trying to make a connection with the crowd. He's not trying to make this a sing-along, even though everybody knows the lyrics to it. It's such a simplistic song to sing along to. War, what is it good for? Everybody can follow along in that. I don't think he's trying to do it, but it just works. And then he's getting angrier. He's getting angrier as it progresses. Say it again. And then that builds to that big moment where all of it was just let out. Fuck me, fuck you, no war, no reason to go to war. Wow. Is that Ed's angriest moment on stage?
It could be. This is definitely one of the most intense performances he's ever done on stage. And you can even, go back to 91, 92 on that. Like, he's going through some stuff here on stage. And it's, like you said, because he starts doing it and the crowd picks up on it. And they're kind of like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. Like, everybody knows this song. And, absolutely nothing. Like, you hear kind of a few people having fun with it. And then it starts to turn a little bit, and it gets a little more intense, and the more people in the crowd it kind of changes. And it's that moment when he goes fuck, like the first fuck me, fuck war, that the whole part is
thrashing around a little bit. Yeah, too.
It's that first one because he was like almost trying not to do that. Like, he almost didn't want to like start with the F-bombs and like really let it go, but he just could not help himself. And he's like visibly shaking. It felt like you were watching Black Flag or something in like 1981. Like, he missed his calling as an early 80s hardcore frontman. But this is one of the ones that people still talk about. I mean, it's one of the best, and like this crowd is into it. It's the right crowd. If you do something like this at Nassau Coliseum, it's not going to get the same response. And he'll kind of like walk it back a little bit later, which is interesting, but he's fully in the moment here.
Finish this off. The last shot is just the mic stand on the ground and just lying there. The shot lays on it for a good 5 to 10 seconds, and that's all you need to know about the remnants of what was on stage at that moment and what he left all out on there. Holy crap. Everything that you need to know about this era in their history was told through that outburst. 2 months later, the country would invade Iraq, and Pearl Jam's trajectory as a band would completely change, and this is just the progression to get into all that. Maybe Ed was supposed to take a moment to talk here, but all he could muster out of that, outside of it, was just Matt wrote this one leading into UR, and it gets funky. Stone sounds really good on this one, and Boom's got some nice organ sounds pumping in the background and kind of getting a little crazy with that as well. Felt like a complete performance. Mike sounding great at the end, and I think he kind of needed one to balance out the anger, to give you a little bit more of a lighter feel, and it's in a way its own love song, but I think it counterbalanced what the tag of War was and what Rearview Mirror was going to end up being right after.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because if you look at this on paper and you don't think about the War tag, you look at like, okay, they're going to run through all these Riot Act songs, and then the end of the main set's going to be, Daughter, You Are, Rearview Mirror, and so Daughter's going to be like the big sing-along. It's going to get everybody back involved, and like it's going to be the moment, but like it was not that moment. Like this main set, it did not end like they expected it to end, I think. And we didn't even talk about like the way the band kind of picks up on his intensity, and like it's kind of different. Got a little bit more intensity even in the way like kind of Stone and Jeff and Matt are playing. And I think that kind of rubbed off on UR too. Like you see Jeff and Mike kind of vibing a little bit. Like they're still kind of in that groove of like, yeah, shit got real. So yeah, they're still in it right here.
It's hard in the aftermath of all that to not build off of that energy, and to not. And look, I think UR is a good example of trying to calm things down without having to not do that. You know what I mean? Like if they were to do one of the first 4 songs in that spot, they would have a really hard time keeping it together. Let's put it that way.
But
I don't think it was the spot for that.
I don't even think they were thinking it was going to need to be calmed down, because you think daughter, like, oh, okay, well, I'm sure he probably didn't even know he was going to go off and do the war tag. Like,
I'm not sure. Look, usually, unless it's like It's Okay, which actually needs Ed to grab a guitar, unless it's something like that, he doesn't usually write it on the set list. So I'm not sure of what direction the band thought he was going in. I think they were just kind of reacting. So yeah, maybe it was all that. It's tough to gauge, but look, the way that they react to it is completely like professional musicians should, and it was great. It was perfect and made for wonderful moments on this DVD. This is where Ed right here kind of takes it back a little bit. This was very quick. I thought that this was going to end up happening a little bit later, but he says, I realized I got some friends in the military here tonight, and I could apologize to them, but them not going to war is another reason why I don't want them to go to war. And the idea is we can have a conversation, we can keep getting better and better, and that's the hopeful idea. And it doesn't get much applause. And he addresses that. He's like, oh, okay, that didn't get much applause. I guess hope is the underdog here. That's all very interesting because bits and pieces of that come out later in 2003, but not a lot. I think by that point, within the months of June and July, I think he's officially had it by that point, and maybe even earlier on in April as well. But I think here he was still trying to see both sides of the coin on this and knowing where he was coming from, but also kind of understanding the other side and trying to, like you said, like trying to have that conversation. He usually says something like that, but he abandoned that aspect after a while.
This is strange. Like you've just, like, picture yourself in this crowd. Like you've just seen this dude like lose his shit. And now, like, one song later, he's kind of like, oh, like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have done that, but like, no, dude, like, own your shit, dude. Like, it's cool. We're with you. You're home. We got your back. Like, yeah, I would have been like, no, dude, come on, like, you're good. Keep going. Like, own it. It felt kind of weird to me.
You have to think also at the time too that like they've always been political, but it hasn't had the kind of juice that this era is about to have. And there wasn't really like and now everything is divisive, and now everything is one side of the fence or the other. And I think 2002, 2003 was really the beginning of all that. There was something that set a precedent that had one way of thinking on one side, another way of thinking on the other side, and a middle ground that couldn't be reached. And I think that maybe he was still thinking that there was an idea that this middle ground could be achieved. And he'll come to realize very, very quickly that's not the case. It just wasn't the case in this point. That once things got worse, they kept getting worse and worse and worse. And obviously, we know how he's going to end up reacting to that in places like Nassau Coliseum and other places where he would do the Bush Leaguer thing and any other politically charged moment with a Know Your Rights or a Fortunate Son that happened that year. It just happened. And I think he didn't expect that to come out of him because I don't think that it was still a sensitive topic. Now you could say something like that and like nobody cares. Nobody cares anymore. Of course you're going to say something like that. Of course you're angry. And of course you're on one side of the fence. I think back then it was more accepting to have some middle ground, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, maybe. I think you still hoped that there could be a peaceful end to all of this, but yeah, it was not to be. No. And yeah, you're right. It absolutely did. This few years, like the 2000 election and leading into that war, absolutely did set the stage for the political climate they have now. But that's a whole other 8-hour podcast.
Seriously, yep. We don't have the time. We don't have the platform for it. So why don't we just talk about Rearview Mirror? I thought Ed's guitar with the EBow, kind of the vibrating off of his strings there, almost gave it a Tom Morello sort of sound to it, which is not very common from his guitar in versions of Rearview Mirror. It was just, it had that kind of that sketchy strumming that comes out of it. I like it. Just
hey, you would take that compliment in a second.
Oh, absolutely. That is not. That's not an insult at all. I love Tom Morello. I know a lot of people, have their thoughts and feelings, but no, I love his style, and I thought that it brought something to what they were doing in this bridge, and Mike was kind of down on the ground trying to pull feedback from the amplifier, and it had sort of a noisy garage rock feel to it, experimental without going too much off script. And then, of course, when the song needs to gather speed, it gathers speed, and it's watching Mike at the end reverberating once, just continuing to strum like he does in Half Full, and just seems like he's on a hot streak with that. And Ed chucks his guitar as he finishes, and Jeff crow hops right over it. But what'd you think of all of it?
It's fine. Not like a standout mirror, but again, that's the show. Like, it's just like with Corduroy. And again, it's the same thing. Like, you forget some of the words to rearview mirror just like you did in Corduroy. Like, those songs aren't going to be the big highlight here. So, yeah, I thought it did its job very well. Not a bad version by any means, but just didn't have a lot of the oomph that a lot of 2003 and later on, like the 2005 versions would have.
Maybe it's the beginning of getting ready for all of that.
Hadn't played it in probably 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past them, yeah. Okay, we're at the encore now. Let's pause for station identification and just kind of talk to you about what's happening for the rest of the year, for the end of the year stuff. We mentioned that this is going to be the last official episode. And what I mean by official episode is that we're not going to cover an actual show for the rest of the year, but we will still have episodes coming through in this time slot. Next week, we are going to have the official debut of Hallucinogenic Recipe, which is our brand new miniseries that is hosted by Patrick Bogle and Brian Horowitz, and they'll go through and they'll talk about a lot of the bootleg collecting aspects, and we'll do that. We'll probably release an episode of that like once a month, once every other month or something like that, but just sort of give you something different, give you something new. And then the week after, which would be the 29th, we haven't really talked about it yet, but there's a lot to kind of look back on 2021 in the aspect of what we've done on this show and the aspect of what Pearl Jam was able to do in 2021. So maybe we'll give you a little bit of that, and maybe, for a lot of people that were new to the show this year and kind of need a refresher, maybe you missed an episode or two, maybe we'll play some clips from some of those past episodes. Because, one of my ideas that I was thinking about, we had mentioned sort of a Hall of Fame, the idea of having a Hall of Fame of these shows that both of you and I gave 10 scores to. Mm-hmm. So is there an idea there where we kind of induct these shows into the Hall of Fame almost? Because we have a couple of them. We have actually pretty fair amount.
More than a few. Yeah.
We did a lot of really good shows this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. God, I'm counting 1, 2, 3.
I think there's 10.
4, 5, 6, 7. At least 7 that we both gave 10s to. So yeah, that's something. Yeah, that'd be fun.
So yeah, maybe we'll do something like that. Like, I think this time was kind of needed to dictate towards other things and getting the Christmas party together, which is happening tomorrow if you're listening to this on Wednesday, happening today if you're listening to this on Thursday. Please reach out if you want to come to the party and need the Zoom link. It'll be all over the place, I'm sure, but please reach out to us, live on fourlegspodcast@gmail.com, or on any of the social medias if you want to come to the party, and we are welcoming to absolutely everybody. It is the end of the year. It's our celebration. It's our gift to you guys for just being an awesome community. And, for anybody that's took part in the gift exchange, it'll be your opportunity to see everybody open up your gift and you open up somebody else's gift. It's going to be great. But yeah, that's pretty much going to be the end of the year for us. And maybe we'll have 1 or 2 other Patreon things that's going to happen this year, but not too much. And then once 2022 kind of kicks in, and maybe we'll get to that at the end of the episode, what we're going to do in 2022. But essentially, we're gonna take requests for the first couple months, and that's because we take requests because people are nice enough to contribute to the show and continue to contribute to the show. And that's what we do for all of our patrons that donate to either the Gig Leg or the Horizon Leg. Head on over to patreon.com/live-on-4legs or download the Patreon app and search for Live on 4 Legs if you want to contribute to the show and get the exclusive episodes. Listen to stuff like Evolution episodes. Never know when a new one of those can be coming up. Listen to stuff like the brand new series that we have on the TV shows, the late night shows that we've been doing, the SNL performances and the VMA performances and things like that. And some other stuff over there too, some other bonus content, bonus episodes, as well as Horizon profiles for all of our Horizon Leg members. So head on over to patreon.com/live-on-4legs if you'd like to contribute. I think we are now officially can get back into the rock. The camera catches a small, just slit of backstage space, and you see Ed. Like you barely see it at first. You're looking, and you're like, "What is? Who is that?" And then he kind of like just slightly turns to the camera. You're like, "Oh, that's the Bush mask! Holy shit!" And it's really funny how it catches you off guard. I don't know if you saw it in the same way I saw it, but like just that shot just didn't quite look like somebody was wearing a mask at first, which is a little bit odd and creepy, but really funny at the same time.
Yep, he's just on the side of the stage waiting in the wings because like he's the last one to come out. He's gonna be waiting for his big entrance with the mask. Yeah, he hadn't quite gotten to the jacket yet, but we got the mask here. But this is his debut of Bush hleaguer.
How does he do it? How do they do it? Uncanny and immutable. This is such a happening tailpipe of a party. Like sugar, the guests are so refined. A confidence man, but why so beleaguered? He's not a leader, he's a Texas leaguer. Swinging for the fence, got lucky with a strike. They keep drilling for fear, it makes the job simple. Born on third, thinks he got a triple. Blackout weaves its way through the city.
Our third and last debut of the night. A lot of the songs were debuted the prior night, or even some of them.
Four debuts. Don't forget, we got one more after this. It's not a Riot Act song.
Well, I'm thinking about the Riot Act song. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, so this was again kind of a small precursor into what would become something way more intense, way more theatrical. This is just him wearing a mask and sort of dancing with the mask, and then after a while, you know, he impales the mask on the mic stand because that's what you do to those things, and he's directly singing some of the lines to it, and then after a while he flicks the mask off the stand and onto the floor and steps on it, and I think lasts the whole entire performance with his foot on the mask. And I thought that was a sort of statement, you know, whether it was subtle or not, and maybe his way to sort of take back what he said at the end of the set there, that kind of took back what he said from the War Tag.
This was more in line with that. I felt like this would have been a good follow-up to that. Because, there's even a moment where he's, like, cradling it, and he's not talking to the microphone, but you see he mouths the word. He goes, "It's okay." Like, talking to the mouth. So it's kind of funny, theatrical, it would become a whole thing in the next year.
As far as, like, overall performance of it, I think in this version and seeing the visuals of it, and like most versions where you see the visuals, you kind of just forget where the song is going, and they're able to kind of just extend it a little bit and kind of go off on it. And I don't know if the visuals sort of cast the song aside a little. I don't know if the song is harmed from that, but it's an interesting conversation. I don't know how you feel about it, but
yeah, it's like the Ed show at this point. It's like Ed and the Pearl Jams. Like, people always kind of make that joke of like, oh, it's just about him, and like the rest of the band doesn't matter, which is like obviously not true. But he's definitely taking center stage on this, and the rest of the band just kind of like, they just kind of fade in the background, like they're just like Stone's just doing his thing watching, like Mike's just over there doing his thing watching. Like this isn't like a full band, like everyone firing on all cylinders kind of a song. It's just a different vibe.
Right. And maybe the reason why they don't need to really bring it back anymore, because
it'd be interesting to do that, to get it without the theatrics and just play the song.
Get it as a regular song.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Be interesting.
Yeah, there would need to be some kind of pull to it, and I just don't know. I don't know how they would do it. It's a question that's been asked to me before, and I've been puzzled on it every time. So we'll just move on from that fact instead of trying to come up with an answer to an equation we don't have the answer for. Ed says that the next one is going to go out to Jeff's parents. They're in the house tonight, and Jeff's dad loves places like this. He's the guy, if you watch the Alive video, that's floating on top of the crowd. And Ed says, I have some neighbors that are here, and if you bump into them, you can ask what it's like to live next to a communist. And I apologized for my 3 dogs shitting in their yard. Perhaps it could be a good souvenir for the guy from Chile. Brings you into a very, very intense and good performance of Insignificance. And I think this is another one that it's like midway through, beginning of the song, it's finding its way, finding the motion. Midway through, at the climactic moment, it sort of has this breakthrough, and Ed strums a little bit faster, raises his voice a little bit higher, and then able to explode. I think Nat has a lot to do with that as well. Just bring together just an enormous ending, the crowd jumping up and down. This was a very wild performance.
This is the kind of a song that can get the spotlight at a show like this, and with a small crowd, and it can really elevate and become something really, really cool. Because I think Insignificance kind of, I don't know if they've ever played it at like a ballpark show, but it feels like it's just not right for that. It feels like it would kind of fall flat there, like at a big arena show. I think it's helped by the atmosphere and the venue, and yeah, it's just, it's really, really good and really, really special. I love this performance. I'm with you.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that, just needing to feed off a crowd that's so compact, and the energy is in there, especially off of a Bush Leaguer, where I don't think the crowd was just kind of reacting to the theatrics of it, and it wasn't, a performance that everybody was kind of in sync on. But you don't get performances of Insignificance where the crowd is just all in tandem bouncing up and down. Like, I don't even think in the binaural era it really had it. Like, I think that there were performances that were really good.
Not nearly as many, yeah.
There are performances of it that were really good, but I think that the crowd had a lot to do with this one standing out a lot more. And I think you're right. I think that if they did play this one in a ballpark, I think it would be a little odd, and I don't think it would get the response.
It would be filler.
Transition, right? It would just be a transition. This is a highlight from this, and with 5 binaural songs, that's saying a lot. That you could still utilize a song and have it have that much power in this era. And look, not a lot of these binaural songs would stick around. This would be one of them, and it would be one that they'd need later on this year. Better Man, I think, again, like starts off a little sluggish and finds its groove midway through and gets really intense towards the end. And Ed with a pretty good improv on this, I need you, I want you kind of thing, and very good stuff. But again, another one of those that felt like it sort of caught up to itself, and it could be the aspect of we hadn't played it in a very long time, kind of put itself together once they got into the middle of it. And these songs are starting to come together midway through, and they aren't quite full on big performances.
Yeah, this is another one that's it feels like it sticks out like a sore thumb, like with your corduroys and rearview mirrors and even Daughter before the tag, you're kind of like, this is coming off all these Riot Act songs. It sounds kind of weird. It just feels like it's out of place. It didn't really hit with me.
Yeah, and I think also from the standpoint, they probably know at the time they're filming it, they're probably going to release it.
Yeah.
They need some of these.
Yeah.
So you have to think like, if they're not going to do Even Flow and Alive, they have to do Better Man, right? Like,
yes,
and they're not going to do Jeremy.
From 10 here. 0 songs from 10.
There might not be a show after this that has that.
Yeah.
There might not be. Look, Do the Evolution could be considered a hit too, and right afterwards, I felt like Do the Evolution kind of fits in more with this environment and this crowd, and I think we talked about this being played in small clubs before, and with the Crocodile Cafe in 1998, but pretty intense from the jump, and putting on Bill Gates' mask, and he's doing some Bill Gates stunts and stuff like that, and that was a thing that he did in the tour prior, on the binaural tour. Whenever he would do Soon Forget, he would put on a Bill Gates mask. So that idea started there and just turned into George Bush instead of Bill Gates. But that mask is still sticking around in this era for a little bit. But this is a fun highlight. I thought that this was good. You're coming close to the end of your night. This is probably your last big dramatic moment from the night, and Ed's kind of changing some lyrics there and forgets some lyrics and dancing when he puts on the Bill Gates mask. Like, yeah, this is a really fun performance.
Yeah, it felt like, seeing it in the kind of a small place like this, it felt like, you're watching Monkey Wrench or watching like Single Video Theory, because you're seeing them with this intimate crowd and like being together, and the song just has that tension and that power to it that it just explodes. It sounds really good. Every time. Another really good Stone solo here, very melodic, very fluid. Thought it played it very, very well.
Ed thanking everybody for coming out and paying their hard-earned money that he swears will go to good places, and thanks the Showbox and a couple other people, and thanks Steve Earle, and says happy birthday to somebody named Taylor, who was 12 years old. So I guess Taylor turned,
31.
30, yeah, right. Yeah, so happy birthday, Taylor. And the crowd erupts into thank you chants before getting into Ledbetter here, which you would think would be the end of your show. It would not be the end of the show, but I thought Ledbetter, usually when we're talking about Ledbetter, at least we're thinking like, okay, end of the show and your last little part of the night, but you're able to kind of put some emphasis on the performance of this a little bit more, because you get, Mike jammy and bluesy to start, but then gets to turn loose a little bit in the middle, and I thought that sounded really good. Some of the improvisations here midway through, saying something like, I saw you last November, I think that's a precursor to some of the improvs that he would be doing in this song way later in this year, where he would be singing more towards the post-war idealism. And it's, you think it's going to end your night, but it doesn't, and I think that kind of makes it more of a highlight, that it doesn't end the night, that it's sort of sitting here, and that they come back and they do more. It gives Ledbetter a little extra weight.
And we know this now, kind of like the meaning behind the song is like in the early 90s, like you had the Persian Gulf War. This story of the song is this guy coming back from war, sees this older couple, gives them like this salute wave, like they don't wave back because he's like some younger, like young dude. They don't think he respects anything. Like it's a generational thing about war, about kids going to war. And yes, it's absolutely ties in perfectly with this set. Like you said, we're used to these kind of celebratory, thanks-filled, big moments at the end of the show, but this is not that. Like he kind of starts with changes that line to like, forces that keep us down. He's still thinking about stuff here. And you mentioned improv, like that whole second verse is basically improv, where he's just going off on that same theme, exploring that same thing about this country's about to go to war again, so this song is going to be relevant, and that's what's going to happen again. And yeah, it's very, very good. This is a really good kind of singular performance of Yellow Ledbetter. I thought it fit right in.
So they'll leave and they'll come back. It'll really be Ed that comes back. That's got to feel special for the crowd, knowing that Ledbetter's played, and I'm sure there are people that are probably like, all right, let's head out. And before getting to the door, hearing that Ed's coming back, they're like, oh shit, let's get our place back in the crowd. But he's sticking around. He comes out with this pedal. He's has a cigarette hanging from his mouth, and he says the rest of the guys are done. But with no material left, I'm going to show you guys some of my early Christmas presents. Somebody gave me a giant-sized Morley pedal and didn't say who it was from, and then shows like a toy ukulele. Says this another gift I got, and after that he's like he's about to tee up Soon Forget, because that's his ukulele song at the time, and kind of looks at the crowd. He's like, police yourselves. Telling them not to go too crazy during a ukulele song, which, of course, is riddled with mistakes and flubs, because it's Soon Forget, and that's usually what happens during this, but it's not unusual for Soon Forget to get a couple of takes.
Yeah, and that's kind of the charm of the song, right? I remember there's one that he has to, like, stop the crowd from clapping because it keeps fucking him up, and, like... Mm-hmm. But yeah, this one is... It's perfect for the moment. I think he shows off, he got his new electric ukulele and he's going to show it off.
It looks like a toy.
It does. Like a little toy electric guitar. Yeah. But it's just fun. Like, this show kind of has that vibe of like kind of off the cuff. Like, we're just kind of making shit up. Like, even says like, we're out of material. Like, no, you have 7 albums.
You got a couple albums you need to do.
Songs, but they practiced the Riot Act songs. They still knew some binaural songs. And they practiced Small Town, Corduroy, Rearview Mirror, Daughter, Better Man. Like, they didn't bother learning any of the deep cuts from the early days for this show. That'll come later. So yeah, they probably really didn't have anything else that they felt comfortable playing.
That's fine. And I don't think they really, at this point, needed to do much more. They knew that they were going to do the last one. I think that's really what mattered. And Ed was probably just giving the band some time to just sit back and collect themselves after that and just sort of connect with the crowd. And like you mentioned, this is another Eddie in the Pearl Jam kind of moment. And 2003 would be not the first time that Ed would really have solo moments on stage, but it would start to become more frequent.
Right.
Okay. This is a live on 4 legs first and maybe a live on 4 legs last. Don't Believe in Christmas.
Said be good, so I did what I should. I hung my stocking on the wall, I didn't get a figured out. Don't believe in Christmas. I don't believe in Christmas. I don't believe in Christmas, cause I didn't get nothing last year. Well, 99 see Santa Claus, right? Sure enough, don't you know the fortnight didn't show? Don't believe in Christmas. I don't believe in Christmas. I don't believe in Christmas, cause I didn't get nothing last year. Well, I'm trying to get a little kiss from a pretty little
why I kept this show out for so long, not doing it in chronological order, because I don't like talking about non-Christmas stuff during September and August and other months. So this was the best time to kind of close out the year, for this to be the closing song of that. It feels a little bit festive. So this Christmas single was actually recorded, if I'm not mistaken, I think the night before they did it in soundcheck, and they recorded the version that they would use for the Christmas single that they would put out that year.
That's right.
And it's fun. It's a cover by a Seattle band called the Sonics that were in around the 60s. The song I think was produced in 1965. There's just this, fun, high energy rockabilly kind of song. It has a very stereotypical rockabilly solo in it that feels like it could be literally anything from the late 50s, early 60s. And Boom has a very high energy solo on it too that sounds really good, but you don't get a lot of the Christmas stuff, and especially at the time, Let Me Sleep wasn't coming back and wasn't being played in shows. So this is one of their only kind of Christmas things that they've done on the live stage for a while.
Yeah, this is cool. And I think this was the pull for the DVD as well. Like, you're going to get to see them play this song that they never played before, and they might never play again. I think they did it a few nights later at Key Arena to close that show as well. But yeah, this is great. It's just fun. It's like one of those things where, like, yeah, we're not taking ourselves too seriously. You mentioned the Boom solo is absolutely the highlight. And Edge just like hunched down reading lyrics, because this song is very lyric heavy. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Right.
So Ed's like, leaning down. He's got his little piece of paper down there with the lyrics. He's reading it, which is fine. But yeah, the Sonics is one of those, like, seen as like one of those proto kind of grunge, like, garage bands from the 60s. They had a big like Sonics 50 compilation that came out, on the 50th anniversary. That was a big deal and got them a lot more like notoriety and kind of a second chance for being very influential, which they were, especially in Seattle. The history. They, from the Pearl Jam movie, that's like bands just didn't go up there, right? You would go and then skip over, and bands didn't come to Seattle. So for a band like that to play there, and it was for a lot of those kids growing up there, your Mark Arms and things like that. I'm sure Mark Arm could talk your ear off about the Sonics. That's probably based his whole career on it. But yeah, I think this is great. It's fun. They never do Santa God. They never do Someday at Christmas. They never do some of that stuff. And this is just of the time. And I wish they would have kept it around. It's just fun.
That was the set list, and now we got to go back and talk about 3 moments that we enjoyed from the set list. So, what do you think? Go first.
Ooh, sure. I mean, this is tough, because I'm gonna have to leave off one that I really, really liked. I'm going to say Thumbing My Way, number 3, Love Boat Captain and Daughter are 1A and 1B. Take your pick. I mean, Save You gets the honorable mention there, but that's it for me.
Yeah, I'm 2 out of your 3 right there, and I can't think of anything that I want more than Thumbing My Way just to be different, even though Save You was very good. I have to give Thumbing My Way and Insignificance kind of the 2 and the 3 there, and Daughter with the War Tag is number 1. Absolutely, just good performances and kind of fed into what the atmosphere was like. I wanted to feel that vibe from this show, what was going to work best from the crowd. And obviously the angrier songs are going to work the best. It's going to rile your crowd up a little bit more. But even Thumbing My Way, that's the one, it's debuting for the first time. Everybody kind of knows the weight and significance of it. And I think that one really, especially for it being the debut, it was just kind of spine tingling. So those are my highlights from this. For the last rating of 2021, what will you be giving this show?
Yeah, this was interesting, because we did the Clarkston show last week, and that was one that didn't have a lot of hits on it, and we kind of like promoted it as that, like, oh, you don't like hits, here's a show for you, and here's another one where, oh, you don't like the hits, here you go, here's a show. So I'm kind of like still in that same kind of mindset where I'm ready for this, but now I feel like I want to do a greatest hits show next week. I almost wish that we had one more show before the end of the year where we could get back into some of that stuff. By the time we get back in January, I'm going to be missing the Jeremys and the, all the animals and the big crowd moment songs that we're going to get to. But for this, there's a reason they made a DVD of it. This is a 9.5. Very, very good.
Yeah, I don't think that this is a 10 either. I'm going to give it a 9. I thought that some of the good stuff was very, very good and very, very memorable. But also, I think a lot of that rust was still coming off. And, even with some of the new songs, felt like there was some sort of getting used to with it and just feeling out moments. Some of them really worked, like Thumbing My Way immediately and like Save You immediately. And some of them were a little bit tougher at the start, like Green Disease was a little bit tougher from this show. Maybe Crop Duster was a little bit more difficult. But at the end of the day, you don't get Pearl Jam at this kind of venue. And like you said, they put this out on DVD for a reason. They, were in a certain mindset at the show that worked for it. And it kind of had its own tense personality to it. And that's why I'm giving it a 9. So those are our final scores of the year. This one did not make the Hall of Fame, so I don't know if this is coming back in our Hall of Fame episode, but there are a bunch that will, and I think that now that has to be a thing. I think we need to do the Hall of Fame, so maybe we will get to talk about some of those big moments that you mentioned, talk about a Jeremy or an Animal or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to this one and tuning in for the whole year. And like we mentioned, this is going to be the last full episode, and we'll still put out Wednesday releases this year because I know that, people will be driving for Christmas and people will want to have something to listen to at Christmas, but there's no lack of content over here on the archives on either Spotify or Apple or on our Patreon archives that you can listen to all the episodes over there. 2022 is coming very, very soon, and I feel like spoiling it a little bit. And I don't know. I think it's one of the comments that we had recently was just like would love to know some of, and it was Curtis that said it, would love to know some of the shows ahead of time so we can listen to the bootleg. And I love that aspect. I love that way of thinking. So you can kind of bring your own thoughts and opinions to listening to this podcast before listening to us. And instead of doing the opposite where you're taking our opinions and then listening to a show and seeing if it matches up. I just don't like looking at life that way. I think, look at through it at your own lens and then see where it measures up for you. But I think from that aspect, we can give you some teases into what we're doing for 2022. Do you want to do that? Or are you interested in teasing this crowd?
Do it. They've waited all year.
Well, I hope I have hope they've waited all year for 2022 stuff. It's like, yeah, I know we're in July, but what are you doing next year, you guys? Like, you got some really great stuff that's coming up.
Next year is like the hope, because like 2020 was so bad, and we thought that 2021 would be better, and then 2021 has been so bad, and now we're kind of getting that hope back. Like, okay, we're gonna get shows announced in January. There's gonna be a tour in May. There's gonna be a European tour. So people are kind of getting excited. So we hope now. We don't know, but
there's hope. But Omicron might say differently. You just never know.
We'll see. But people are kind of cautiously looking to the future again. So yeah, I think that's appropriate.
Okay, so some of the things that we'll be doing, I think a lot of what's going to happen in both January and February is just playing catch up on a lot of requests that we've gotten. And I think what happens when we're not going to have a full year theme like we did this year or we did the year before where we did Around the World, and this year obviously being Hometown. We're not going to, and this is probably the first year we're not doing a full theme. We're going to do more monthly theme stuff. I think it's just easier, and it gives also a chance for the people from Patreon that haven't had their requests brought to the table. I think it gets them their show quicker. And so we're jumping around eras. We're going to be doing a little bit of 2005 to start, and I think we're going to do Toronto from 2005, Worcester from 2013, Indianapolis from 1998, Berlin from 2009.
It'd be good to do something out of the U.S. We've done a big
We've
run
done a lot of U.S. stuff.
USA Canada run, so it'll be good to kind of get out again and see what the rest of the world was like.
Well, one of our monthly themes that we're going to be doing is leading up to the week of March 16th, since it was recorded on March 16th. A lot of you might know that date, you might not. The date might not be significant. However, there were significant shows, since it is the 30th anniversary of 1992, which is really their boom to fame. We're going to be covering a lot of their Holland stuff from the 92 run, from March of 92. You think about the Den Haag shows, the Utrecht show, the Rotterdam, like all those were really early great bootlegs, and having the guys that do the hallucinogenic recipe show can kind of give you their take and maybe kind of do a corresponding episode based off of that and kind of give you some.
I had that Den Haag tape. I listened to that thing nonstop.
I'm sure that was one of the earliest ones. So we're going to do that. We're going to do some of those from Holland. We're going to build to finally get to, and I know a lot of you probably have wanted it, probably have asked for it, but we're finally going to get to Unplugged. And it's the 30th year anniversary. And I say the date, 3/16, because it was recorded that day, but it wasn't the day that it was aired live on MTV. That didn't come until later in May. So we're going to take the actual day. I don't know if we'll cover that based off of the set list that they played that night or based off of what they did on TV. I think we're going to do it based off of what they played that night.
Oh yeah, I think we have to go by how they played it. Yeah.
Right. And then we'll mention how they aired it on TV.
People know.
Right. It's not a big deal, but that'll be a thing. There's going to be a month full of Vault shows, which are releases that are 10 Club Vault vinyl releases. Whatever ones we haven't done yet. I think there's the Vegas 93 one that we haven't done, Bellingham that we haven't done. Just some of those shows. I know a lot of you collectors out there probably have those, so if you're excited for those, that should interest you. And, I know we mentioned doing kind of going across the globe again, doing some more global stuff. And our plan and our hope is to usually do one Australian show per year, which it doesn't seem like enough. But look, I think the Australian people need to come through and just be like, hey, and we have a couple that have requested stuff. So it's coming, and I don't know when it's coming, but we will have our one typical Australian show per year, our one South American show, but there should be more. Don't know if it's going to happen yet, but one of the things that is preventing it from happening is that we are going to do our Forgotten State, OTOTO State Month. And that's going to feature states like Boise, Idaho from 2000, Augusta, Maine from 1996. Shows that they've only played in once in a state. Casper, Wyoming in 95. That they only been to a state once. And, those are some of the themes. We'll do some other things, and I think we're going to take an opportunity to maybe do some votes for shows for people to vote for what they want, for what you guys want to get into a show. We'll do some big, elaborate vote system, and we'll air a show that way because we haven't done something like that in a while. So I think this is more opportunity. And again, a lot of this is might end up coming when they're going on tour. So, all that stuff is going to happen, and we'll keep the train going. And, we had a really good 2021. I really loved what we did this year, and I think 2022 should be just as successful, just as good. And once again, I don't see much success coming out of this if it isn't from you guys listening at home and taking the time to check this out and communicate with us that you're loving what we're doing. So thank you guys. You guys have been the rock for this, and this has just been fun all the way. So hope you guys are enjoying this and enjoying it into next year. I'm done. Out of adjectives, onto the spiel. This may be the end. We're here for not for much longer, although we may be parting ways. Miss you already. Miss you always. Hey, we had a good year this year. We had a couple shows. It wasn't much, but it was something. Come to the Christmas party tomorrow. Hope to see you there. If not, we'll see you next year.
Thanks, everybody.
you. Good night.